that was going against the debt, against the bond, yeah. So
That's correct.
it's part of the F and F. Okay. Any other questions?
So the total will be $92,739.60.
Do you know what we're doing with the old smart boards?
I do not.
Right. Any other questions? Treasurers?
Okay, moving on to the next item, the treasurer's report. The general fund account balances decreased by $3.5 million in January 2022. However, the year-to-date comparison shows they're about $1.3 million above the same point in time the prior year. Non-general fund account balances increased slightly, while the comparison to the prior year shows a significant decrease of $4.9 million. This changes the year-to-year comparison is due to the bond funds and the differences between how much we have in each of the bonds at this time. Is there any questions on the treasurer's report?
No.
Okay, going on to the next one would be the budgetary transfers. There's 4 budget transfers that require board approval. These are the standard movement of budget amounts to where the actual cost exists. Is there any questions on the budgetary transfers?
Not for me.
No.
Okay. Moving into the expenditure and revenue reports. Local revenue. Local revenue is currently at 96.72% of the budgeted amount. It totals $86.5 million year to date and $2.4 million for the month of February. Overall, local revenue needs an additional $2.9 million to meet budget. State revenue is currently 47% of budgeted amount. Totals $11.4 million year to date and $1.3 million for the month of February. Overall, local revenue needs an additional $12.9 million to meet budget, and is primarily driven by the PSERS and Social Security that we get back from the state.
That's just a type of state revenue. Right?
I'm sorry, what was that?
That's a typo state revenue, the last bullet.
Yes, state revenue. You're looking at my notes, yes. Okay, sorry about that. Yes. Federal funds for the month are $43.4 thousand, bringing the total amount year to date to $566,000, or 90.96% of budget. Federal revenue is currently at 105.5% of budget. Totals $656.7 thousand year to date and $90.4 thousand for the month of February. For the expenditures in the month of
Real quick, Mr. Parker, before you go to that, just for revenue, because on that last tab, that's the first time I've seen you say needs additional 2.9 to meet budget, needs 12.9. Are we trending to meet that budget then based on last year's?
we'll get to that on the forecast if that helps.
Sorry, I'm asking another question too soon. All right, I'm just saying that, I'm paying attention to your bullets and I'm questioning.
That's fine. I will go over that when we get to the forecast. You'll see where we're expected to come in on all that.
Thank you.
So February for the month expenditures, salaries total $3.8 million versus $3.7 million the prior year. This is $129.5 thousand above the prior year at the same point in time a year ago. Benefits total $2.5 million versus $2.4 million the prior year. This is up $38,000 from the prior year comparison. Operating expenses totaled $2.3 million versus $2.2 million the prior year, an increase of $67,000 from the prior year. Debt and transfers totaled $114.7 thousand versus $2.5 million the prior year. This is related to the timing of the bond payments that change over time and paying off of the leases. You'll note next month all the bond payments for this year are being made. So after March, the bond payments will level out to as expected. I think we're actually over 1 penny over our budgeted amount on the bonds. Overall expenditures were $8.7 million in the month of February versus $10.8 million a year ago. The change in debt payments is driving force for this variance, which totaled $2.3 million. Fiscal year to date, Salaries are up $805,400 from the prior year, totaling $26.5 million in February versus $25.7 million a year ago. Benefits are up almost $500,000 from the prior year, totaling $18.4 million year to date. Operating expenses total $16.6 million versus $13.3 million the prior year. This is an increase of $3.4 million. The driving forces behind this are the contracted carriers of $2.2 million, which is our transportation costs, as the district was virtual for the start of the 2020-2021 school year. This is not unexpected. Other professional services are $1.1 million above prior year. Again, this is attributed to the virtual start of the prior year. Debt and transfers year to date total $2.7 million, which is $2.1 million below, again, timing of the bonds, the paying off of the North Monco lease, and the ESCO lease. Overall expenditures for February totaled $66.1 million year to date versus $63.4 million a year ago. Is there any questions on the revenue and expenses?
So Tim, the debt and transfers, the 2.1, I can understand some of it, or is some of it related just to the timing of the payments as well? So some of it is related to North Monco, right, which was I think 900,000 or something like that, right? But
well, the North Monco and the ESCO leases monthly costs were roughly about, I think it was like $300,000-$400,000 off the top of my head. I can't remember the exact number, but it is mainly due to the timing of when the bond payments are due. That's why I'm saying at the end of March, all the bond payments will have been made this year, which is typically you're typically on a September and a March basis. But we had some that paid different months previously, and again, it also went back to those leases.
So it's on budget, it's just the timing, primarily timing.
Yeah, it's just timing.
Any other questions? No other questions?
Okay. Moving on to the healthcare reports. December's healthcare showed a increase of $46,548 in our fund balance. This increases our fund balance to $741,255. The second look on the healthcare was completed, and current forecast is the rate will be decreasing from what we previously budgeted. However, we're not going to be making any budgetary changes until the third look, as it goes up and down, and we don't have a drop and then jump back up on us. So we'll see where the final third look is on the healthcare. Is there any questions on the healthcare report?
When is that third look?
The third look is going to be in April.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Hearing none, moving on to the master plan financials. The fund totals $19.9 million. This includes $5.7 million in committed funds, $12.5 million in bond money, $1.7 million in capital reserves. It's important to note that the board approved the expenditure of $168,000 from the capital reserves, so that amount will reduce once those items are acquired. For the 2021 project, Eagleville has $670,000 remaining as we close out the project and work through the punch list. The high school canopy project is going to restart. That has about $1 million left, and that is supposed to be done in July of this year. Eagleville roofing project for the 2022 projects is at $1.2 million, and you'll note that the Skyview BAS project is at $166,200. This includes the amount that was approved by the board last month to do the overall systems there. Arrowhead continues to process with the funds being dispersed. The total amount remaining on that is $12.3 million. There was a question in property on the timing associated with that. Just to give everyone an example, we just recently paid the January invoices, so there is a delay between when the work is finished, the AIA forms are completed, reviewed, approved, then reviewed over in my office for completeness, and then actually processed for payment. And the payments then will show up in the March numbers. Overall, the projects total $15.5 million, which leaves us with $4.4 million of cushion if we include the capital reserve, and $2.6 million if we exclude it. Any questions on the master plan financials?
Questions?
No.
Hearing none. I'm going to go into legal expenditures. Legal expenditures increased by $118,000. $37,600 was due to Shannondale's appraisal work, while $73,300 were due to right to know costs. We've currently spent $622,600 on a budget of $425,000. A change in the right to know solicitors was approved last month. We will not see the impact of any on the billing until the prior work is resolved and those invoices would cease. Any questions on legal expenditures? Hearing none. Moving into charter school expenditures. Currently, charter schools through the month of January were $235,897.48 higher than the budgeted amount. We have slightly more than $600,000 in committed funds for this overage. We currently have 20 students more than we did the prior year, which was the average that we used. We're running similar to expectations used in setting the committed amount of funds, and the anticipation is that we'll be able to cover the overage that we will get in our budget. Total charter school students total 94. That includes special and regular education students. Any questions on the charter schools?
So, no, I just gonna state it a different way. We, last year, knew that most likely not all the students that went to charter school were going to return, but we had hoped that some percentage of them would return. You're saying the budgeted amount that we have is going to cover the additional charter schools expenses that we put away in the assigned funds?
Yes, the committed funds will cover that overage. That we did not, we can't force the kids to return, but we did get some to return. When we made our estimate, we had hoped that about 50% or so would return. When we budgeted our numbers, we went back to prior year averages. So the amount that we went above that, we committed with the excess from last year, and that's proven to be actually where we're trending, is pretty much about a 50% return.
Okay, so the 600 is gonna be more or less, there's not gonna be a surplus or a deficit related to the $600,000.
The $600,000 over expenditure on charter schools will be covered by that committed funds, yes.
Yeah, okay. So more or less on anticipation of what we expect, is what the point is.
Correct.
So, and you have made no changes, I know we're gonna talk about budget, but you have made no changes in those numbers moving forward at this point for next year's budget?
So in the budget, we have the 94 students.
As the current enrollment? Okay.
Yep. Any other questions on charter school expenditures?
No.
No other questions on that?
Moving forward on the substitute expenditures, year to date, we've spent $788,300 on substitutes. We currently have $138,000 more than budgeted. However, as part of dealing with the attritional savings, funds from the staff and benefits have been transferred to these line items. We'll continue that process as we go through the year. This eliminates the attritional savings that we had previously in the budget as we reduce the subs budget. We're currently $216,000 below our prior year costs, but this is partially due to the ability to fill the positions. The increased rates will begin this month, which could increase costs as we head towards the end of the year. Any questions on the substitute expenditures?
Have we seen the budgetary transfers on those? I don't remember seeing those.
They're within the program, so that they don't need to go to the board.
Okay. That is the policy.
The ones that go between programs, like regular ed to special ed or special ed to regular ed, those need board approval per the auditors.
It would be, although we don't have to approve it, I think if you could bring that to the finance committee to let us know what those attritional savings are and how in line they are with previous years. Yeah, you don't have to.
bring,
Previous years it's probably less of an important, but the bottom line is to understand the attritional savings that we're covering for the increase in subsidy costs is, I would imagine, I guess the question is, there a lot of variability from year to year on that amount or not? So I'm just trying to understand from a budgetary perspective, are we supposed to be looking at this closer, or generally we are in line with this sort of estimation of how much that's gonna be each month, each year?
so the savings was taken out of so we initially used to budget for $1.7 million of substitute costs. What we've done is we removed that down to $650,000 this year. So we've removed $1.05 million out of our budget, and that was what we figured our attritional savings were. What happens is when the amount of cost for subs exceeds the budgeted amount, we do budget transfers from salary and benefits into the sub cost. By doing that, when you look at the actual numbers, you'll notice that the salary numbers will be more in line with the budget associated with that, because we'll be reducing the salary and benefits budget while we put it into the substitute cost.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm asking, Tim, is we've raised substitute rates twice in the last, 3 or 4 months. So there's gonna be an increased cost on substitutes, and we have the attritional savings trying to cover it. So there's a possibility that the attritional savings is not gonna cover. So I'd like to be able to know how much was related to us increasing the substitute rates versus the attritional savings not materializing like we expected.
He has it in the budget presentation.
Okay. Any others?
Any other costs or questions?
No.
Okay, we'll go on to the 21-22 budget projections. Just let me know when it's up on the screen there.
Sorry?
You need to do the budget projection for this year versus the next presentation will be the budget update.
Are you doing the forecast, Tim?
Yes.
All right, sorry.
Yeah, I said projection, sorry, I should have said forecast.
Okay, it's up on the screen, and it's large enough for most people to read.
Okay, great. So this is, I'm gonna give you my caveats. This is where we stand as of March. A lot of factors can change. A lot of this information I'm getting from other sources, such as like Berkheimer is giving me the projections for the EIT, so I'm relying on their numbers, and this is just a projection. As we get closer to the year end, I'll be doing this each month, and it'll get tighter and tighter as we get closer to year end. This is where we stand as of today, based on the assumptions that I've been able to gather. With that said, our revenue is anticipated to be $116 million versus a budget of $114.4 million, giving us a surplus in budgeted revenue of $1.7 million. There's making up the bulk of these items, try to give you the highlights of the major items that were associated with that. First off, our delinquent real estate taxes, they're coming in about $660,000 lower than we forecasted, and that's due to the lack of inventory when talking to Montgomery County. There's just not that much to collect. I'm trying to work with them to try and fine tune our budget projections on that for future years. The earned income tax, I had a conversation with Jim Hunt of Berkheimer, and he is telling us right now we're running about 8% above their initial forecast. There's several reasons that could be for that. It could be the increase in salaries that people are getting in pay. It could be employment going up. Really, it's just a matter that we're collecting more because people are earning more. I have no idea where the source of it's coming from, whether it's new jobs or pay increases. The interim real estate taxes are up by about $565,000 also. That's as new COs on housings come in. That's much higher than we had budgeted. We used, kind of took a look at prior years and when we set that budget, but without knowing how many houses are gonna be completed each year, we were off by about $560,000. It also includes $421,000 of ESSERS 2 funds. Obviously, they weren't budgeted for. And we also got receipts from other LEAs of $375,000. Now, this is for when we educate individuals that are incarcerated, the schools that have the student that are sending the students to Eagleville. We then educate them and they have to reimburse us for that education. In 17-18, they had missed the payment to us. There was something wrong with the form. Long story short, it was questionable on whether or not they knew that or not. Not meaning they did anything bad. They didn't know that the form had an error on it, and we completed it. It took us until just this year to get that $375,000. So we've been after them for about 3 to 4 years on that money. I got to give credit to. What was that?
Nothing.
I said I have to give credit to Danielle for sticking on that. She did a great job of continuously following up with them and making sure that we got that money. It never left her tickler, so she was always on that. The next item is real estate transfer taxes. We're projecting it to be up about $300,000. Sales are just more robust than we had anticipated. Basic subsidy, that was up by $246,000, $247,000. That occurs because when we approve the budget, the state budget has not been approved. When it is, we actually use the number that's actually in the approved state budget. However, we don't know what that number is going to be, so we budget the same as the prior year. When the state budget was approved post our approval, then that number was obviously higher. We couldn't account for it. The big one is the local real estate taxes that everyone watches. The local real estate taxes, we're about $115,400, almost $500,000 below our anticipated budget. So realistically, we're at 99.85% of our budgeted amount is where we're projecting this to come into. There's minor trailing items that may come in like $1,000, $2,000, but we're pretty much done our real estate collections on that end. But I thought 99.85% of the budget was pretty good. That gives us a total variance of $1.7 million of the 1.72 of projection, the forecasted variance.
There's a question.
So Tim, on the revenue, I think just for the audience and those who might be watching online, I think it's confusing about this $375,000 you explained related to being something that we've been chasing. But can you explain, because the facility resides in our school district? I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the issue is that we have to pay for it and get reimbursed for it because the correctional facility is in our
Incarcerated youth program, and all incarcerated youth programs in the Commonwealth operate the same way. So where the location of the program and the delivery of the service, the school district that comprises that community is responsible for running the program and then billing and collecting the funds from the other sending districts.
Okay.
But when I say other sending districts, it could be districts from anywhere where the child was the original, where the original home school was.
Okay, so if there's a student from Upper Moreland by chance,
Right.
We more or less pay for it and then get reimbursed from Upper Moreland, so it's a pass-through more or less.
Right.
Okay. So because it sounded, you said Eagleville too, I think you said.
Yeah, it's like there, but
Yeah, it's the Montgomery County Correctional Facility. Yep. Thank you.
continue.
Okay. All right, going into the expenditures, we're projecting that our salaries will be about $500,000 above budget, below budget. Benefits are about $945,000 below budget. Our building budgets will come in about $45,000 below budget, and the departments will spend about $1.6 million more than budgeted. When we look through that, the factors that go into that, obviously, the salaries at $480,000, and then you have the medical benefits are $592, almost $600,000. The business office is going to be above. We're going to be spending more than we had budgeted. A portion of that will be legal costs, full day kindergarten costs, audited services. So that's, and again, this is projections. Things can change month to month. Personnel costs, as I said, that'll be covering the subs. We're projecting $604,000. So when you're looking at the salary and benefits being about $1.5 million above, over 600,000 of that will be moved to the personnel costs. And I'm estimating where that will be based on the new numbers that we're going to be paying out on that. So that $1.5 million will get reduced to $1.4 million, will get reduced by that $600,000. It could be higher or lower. And again, if people make changes in their health care benefits, that's going to be captured each month too. We've had several of those. Pupil services, we have $656,000. That's being driven by the charter schools, as we already addressed, and the professional services. Transportation, we're running about 89 versus 94 routes, which is a little lower. And we've outsourced 3 of them. So the 3 that are outsourced are run at a lower rate. And we've had lower activity runs. So there is some savings with transportation. Additionally, our fuel costs are below the budgeted number on that because we actually purchased most of our fuel in this year, so we didn't know where the numbers would be. I held off as long as I could. Right now, as a point of reference, we're paying $1.36 a gallon for diesel because that was purchased post-budget being approved because we had a surplus from the prior year due to COVID, so there was no reason to buy at that time. So I got lucky, I'll be honest, when I'm not going to take credit for getting such a good price. Our trader called me and told me we had a lower price, and I locked in on that price when he gave me that call. We also have a savings of about $158,000 in tuition costs. So that savings is right there. And then retirement's $143,000, and that's directly tied into the salary savings that we get there. Overall, that gives me a variant that explains about $92,000 of the $118,000 in forecasted variance. When I look at both items combined, you're looking at about $1.8 million surplus. I'm sorry. Yes. Sorry. You're looking at that's actually wrong. I have my math wrong. That $1.6 million surplus. Again, we could do more transportation than projected. Things can change. That's where we stand based on today's assumptions. Any questions?
So could you, could you say that if you look at this, you say like there might be a projection of 1.6 surplus, but if you're looking at the revenue, it kind of correlates to that 1.7, right? So I just want, when we look at it, all that additional income up there, when you're looking at real estate and all the other items, it's not like we didn't budget correctly. It just happened that we were getting more income coming in from local, state, and federal as well. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, so the earned income tax, when we budget that's set by Berkheimer. They give us the estimate of what they feel based on our budget and what our income and what their plans are. They actually give us that projection. The numbers that you're looking at, the only one that's really in our control in setting, and where we actually set it and do it, or based on what we're putting in, is the real estate taxes. And we were at 99.85% budget, which is pretty strong when you're looking at close to $70 million. The basic subsidies, the timing issue, like you just said, there's no way I would have known we were getting that receipts from the LEA 375. That we've been chasing for years, and I would have never known the ESSER. So those 2 items alone are about $800,000 of that. So really, we're $900,000 over if you take out just those two items.
Yeah, I think that's just important to say, because when you look at that and you say surplus, and you've got people thinking that we budgeted correctly, but these additional funds that have come through have provided us that. You could see directly where it came from. Okay, that's.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the assumptions, so the question that should be, is there some additional assumptions or questioning of our assumptions we should be making on some of these, like earned income? I realize that's not a number that we got from there, and I know that when COVID first hit, we decided that we were going to take a swag at how earned income was going to be affected for that next
Right.
budgeted year. But I mean, we do put projections in here with increased property values, right? So, but we also know there's additional people coming into there is gonna be a population effect of those additional houses coming in. So I don't know if we should just take the average income of the expected 100 people coming into the school district, that 50% of them are working, you know, something. I'm not sure that Berkheimer would be forecasting beyond that. So I just ask Dave that you and Tim look back on, you know, is there more, can we be in front of some of these sort of very conservative, sometimes very conservative assumptions on the revenue side? And we haven't really gotten hurt. I mean, I get Tim's point. Most of this is not really controllable this year, but some of them, I think we just need to evaluate the assumptions a little bit to see if there's a little more we can squeeze out.
Yeah, we typically were using 3 or 5 year trends on some of this revenue.
Yeah.
The problem is we estimated it outside of that because of an unknown year.
No, exactly, and we're about to, with all that's going around in the world, we going into another completely unknown year. So I get it. I just want to, if we could just list what sort of the basis for it is, because so even if you think about the assessed values, we take the assessed values as the latest we have it, which is usually May, right? April, May.
That's what we used.
Yeah, so May, but we know most likely those assessed values will be going up.
Well, Tim, you want to share, I don't know if you heard Paul talking about the assessed values from month to month. Do you remember last year or 2 years ago when we actually had the assessed values go down?
Yes, it gave me a nice heart attack. So right before we did when we did the preliminary final budget, that May, the numbers dropped, and we've had, like this month, just this month, the numbers came in, and Lower Providence was flat. There was no increase, or there was actually no change in Lower Providence assessments. So, and that would not affect the local real estate taxes when we're setting that. That would affect the change in assessments. You could sit there and say would affect the interim taxes, because that's the ones coming online, the changes that occur. Some months they go up, some months they go down. Typically, right now, it's been going up, and a lot of that, again, you're looking at the former golf course, Center Square Golf Course. That's changing, that's growing, so that's coming online. The one next to Superior Tube is now fully filled. So as that came in, that's what's driving that interim taxes, as they're getting their COs and those properties are being coming online for sale.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think we just need to be practical. We know that some of these are coming online, so we do know that they're at least going to have increase. I mean, those are not cheap houses at Center Square, right? So those are, you know, they're houses coming online. We know that there's going to be a few more coming on, right? And where we do have sort of visibility to what's being appealed or contested on the assessment value. I mean, what would negatively, what independent of assessment appeals would be driving the property values down on the assessments? I know that it happens, but shouldn't we have visibility to that?
Well, we have several appeals that are out there as the appeals go through. I know we're looking at two just this month that are going to be appeals that are going to be settled. That's going to drive down the values associated with those.
Yeah, I know.
So
I just think we need to be, I understand why we want to be conservative, because there's variability. I get that in the approach, but also there's a practical nature of knowing what's coming online.
Yes, I think, Tim, we talked about this, trying to estimate, for example, when a Shandell property is coming online, or estimate when some of these other houses will be, getting their, occupancy permits, and when they come online. And I guess, most of our, if we start estimating what those properties are and when they're coming on, and including those as part of the revenue, I mean, there's a risk in that.
No, there is a risk, but there is a risk.
Because construction should stop.
Right, yeah, I mean, but that's true, but there's gotta be a realistic risk. I mean, everything has a little bit of risk, but we can't, I don't know if we necessarily.
We pick them up the following year, so when they come on partway through the year, we're picking them up and we're including them as part of the revenue projection for the following year. So I know it, for 3 months or 6 months, whenever they come online, and as piecemeal, we're gaining a little bit of revenue for each of those, in advance, but.
You know what I would almost love is just having a slide of the tracking of it, because we all are from the public, and everyone, just us seeing the tracking, okay, you're tracking where we are with the, the letter of occupancy, and just to have that tracking, it doesn't have to be, here, these are the ones that are, we're supposed to, with the lawyers, to talk about the appeals on assessments. I know that's supposed to be something we're scheduling, but when it comes to new construction, knowing that we're just tracking,
So part of that we are. So if you look historically, we're looking at $300,000 of interim real estate taxes, $390, $640, $420, $370, $440, and then we budgeted. Then we had a blip of $886. We actually have been increasing our budget in that area. This year, it's just higher than we increased it. I could have gone even more, but when you're looking at, if you just take out last year's alone, and you look at the other ones, we've been averaging right around somewhere between $350,000 to $450,000. This budget has $450,000 in it. So the only anomaly would have been last year, in that now we're looking at 2 years in a row, so now we're gonna have to look to increase that again.
Yeah, but that means our interim through February is $1 million. Right?
And again, that's if sales continue at the rate they are.
Yeah.
So if rates go up, the costs go up, you're looking at fuel going up, people may not have the disposable income, now sales can go. Remember, this is just a forecast, this is not actual.
No, I guess it's more of a budgeting question, is moving forward, that's one of the reasons we do this, right? I just want
This
to be
budget-
a conscious decision of deciding not to be that conservative, or as opposed to, we need to look at the facts around us to understand that Center Square was my guess, most of this is because we didn't anticipate that many houses on Center Square coming online, but in retrospect, we possibly could have looked at that a little closer and put a little more in an interim, because we knew, I don't know how many properties are going online on there, but there's a lot at $900,000, whether they're selling for. So.
And I know it's challenging to talk about, having more revenue and then it resulting in a surplus. But the conversation of having not enough revenue, I just.
Yeah, no,
I think what we could do is maybe show you where we, where do we get to the number? We're saying we're using the 3-year average, we're using the 5-year average. That way everyone's comfortable with that, and if that makes sense, before we say we're gonna jump into, future predicting what we're gonna get. So you hear that, Tim?
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Basically what I do is make sure that we have we show them the calculation behind, our estimates. So if we,
Okay.
yeah,
The only thing I would do is I would suggest if you were to move that up a little bit on the screen, clumping it based on like, Esser's is a rare thing, like separating out, you put real estate, not that it matters, but you put the real estate taxes down, that's a consistently, like you said, you have that predictor amount of 99.85, but separating out a little bit, like Esser's is something that's new, the LEA is something that's not gonna happen again, the grants are something, so you're putting all that's expected and what's not usually expected in the same category, and I don't think that's,
let's make that adjustment, we'll make that adjustment. That's a good,
yeah, because otherwise it looks like we're not predicting our budget correctly, so.
that's reasonable.
So you're saying.
If you look at it, so if you take those items out, right? So you take the 421, the 375, and the 246. Those are items that you couldn't project on. That leaves you a variance of $677,000.
Yeah, like
On
that's,
100.
right, like, I feel like that's a better, just separating that out a little bit, because Esser's 2 is probably not gonna happen again, like, those are the things that, right.
Yeah, Tim, just for our next, go around, let's have a separate column of one-time funds, either one-time revenue,
Okay.
potentially even one-time expenses.
Yeah, and like our grants, I mean, I love Dr. Angstead, she's a grants fiend, but like, you know what I mean? So you have to put that in as a one-time expense that happens, that's why we were able to do all those programs, but we would never put it into
If
our
you
revenue resources
if you-
consistent.
If you take those three things out, you're looking at a 0.59% variance on a $114.4 million budget.
And then that makes it a
That's
little
made
bit
a year
better
in
to
advance.
understand, like,
So we would only take the things out into the one-time category that weren't in the budget. There are sometimes grants that go into the budget, but no.
No, well, Tim answered the question directly, yeah, so I'm good.
all brains are working together.
Yeah, I wanted to know what the amount was, and we just, yeah.
It's a big difference, so that's why it's like that.
Good perspective. Any other questions, comments? Okay.
Sam, can you share this with us then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either tonight or tomorrow morning, I'll email it out. Tim, do you want to?
What was that?
If you're putting in the Monday, and if you're putting in
Friday
Friday.
night.
we-
Okay, I'll do that. So Tim, I have the budget update for March on the screen.
Okay, so can you just go to start on the second page, which is the revenue changes?
We're there.
And I'm assuming that's up there. So assessments increased by about $1.8 million. So that was factored into this change. Our millage actually had an increase.
Make it a little bigger, the print.
You put it in slide mode,
Slide mode.
Yeah, I know, but
F11.
the left of the, yeah.
that's where you're.
Hey.
All right, much better.
There you
And I don't
go.
want to read glasses first.
Perfectly big on my screen. Okay, so I'll start over. The assessments increased by about $1.8 million. The millage increased to 2.85, which is up from the 2.59%. Interest income updated based on our current values that we have in our bank accounts. And staffing changes updated our Social Security and PESers. All that information changed, totaled about $251,000 worth of increased revenue, bringing the total budget to $118.7 million. And then if you go to the next slide, expenditures, there was several different expenditures occurred. Staffing updates changed, which is impacts salary, Social Security, PESers, healthcare benefits, vision, and was also changed to have a 0% increase. We were able to get our vision company, we're fully funded with them, to not increase our vision for the 5th year in a row. So since I've been here, vision has not increased. We've been working really good with VBA, and they've been very good with us on keeping that flat. The North Monco budget was updated. That information was provided. Security costs were increased to meet our current needs. Graduation was changed from Subaru Park back to the high school. We added bocce ball for the unified sports, and we have the impact of the increased staffing. So when you look at this, you'll see that there's about a $50,000 increase in the salaries. Then you have the associated changes in medical, prescription, vision, and dental. Obviously, they're going down because we're going to be having, depending on the staff that you have come in, that'll change those items down. Because they'll be changing the coverage that they have. And then we have the Social Security that goes to about $3.8 thousand, and then the retirement's about $17.6 thousand. We also have on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice that we have the security cost increased by about $124,000, and we're refining that, so that is not the last change you'll see in security. We are working through that to try and understand what we need to meet the school district's needs there. The CSIU costs approved by the board last month, $390, that comes out. We had an increase of graduation of $8,400, that's having it here, but you'll see there's a graduation change down below, which is a $17,000 reduction. So the net change is a reduction. It's just where it falls in cost. Unified sports, I said $1,800. We also increased our transportation software by $3,000. Bus Boss, not to be confused with Bus Patrol, is looking to move their software online, which would increase our cost associated with that. So we're putting that in there right now, depending if they have that ready to go by the end of the year or not. And then North Monco's budget was down by $41,000, so that's pending approval. Assuming that does get approved, that'll be the last change you'll see for that. And then based on the building sub increase, there's about a $165,000 increase in building subs. All in all, our expenditures went up by $251,000, matching the revenue. Next slide.
Just a note.
So,
Tim, just give me a second. So just a note for everyone. So the security costs, we took the liberty knowing that we have to change security companies. And we're going to be making a proposal to the board at next month's meeting. It just challenges with performance and challenges with staffing have left us less than satisfied with that. So we have some recommendations, and we'll be sharing that with you, but we figured we'd better get that into the budget now as we start working towards May and June finalization.
So before you move on, the salary is just, I know that there were a lot of postings you said you were evaluating over the last couple of months related to. So is this the net effect of the changes you want to make to the organization?
No.
Okay.
That's just the subs, correct? Or no?
Yeah, I'm
That's
asking
the
about the
salary.
79,775 number there on the salary, but that's not, this is not related to changes that you're
No. So,
hoping to do.
so you probably saw in my, I believe it was on last week's memo about our focus on math for the next school year. That doesn't include this information. So we expect to have all of our staffing stuff done and decided by the end of this month.
Okay, so it's not in here, all right, that's
You'll
fine.
see that reflected, so you know exactly where we're at. You'll let us know whether or not those recommendations are acceptable, and, hopefully they'll find its way to the May and June meeting.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about, I guess, in January or February, about you doing what you're gonna propose what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
the transportation cost, I assume is built on the 89 routes.
Tim, transportation costs built on 89 routes.
So we're probably going to be doing the rerouting like we do. We'll start looking at that. I don't want to be at 89. The reason we're at 89 is we have 89 drivers. We need to be at 94. It would provide relief in trying to get the different buildings on time. Our routes are predicated on to meet our students' needs is 94. That's where we want to be. That's what I'm asking First Student to do. Unfortunately, First Student just like everyone else, they're having staffing issues. So instead of buses running shorter and being able to get to different buildings quicker and easier, we're just making it on time a lot of the times, or we're a little late trying to get there. you know, it's one of the things we're looking at. I mean, could it get down to 91, 92? Maybe, but as we go through the routing, which is starting, best practices will start next week. We'll be discussing the best practices associated with that. We might go down a little bit, but I also have to sit there and say in our agreements with First Student, depending if there's a 5% change in that, which going to 89 would, if we're going to say that they have to go to 89, that would trigger an event in our contract with them.
So that, when we had the previous discussion about the forecast for the year, that would be a good thing to point out, that we didn't budget 94 and then only need 89. We budgeted 94, but we couldn't fulfill them all, so we had to reroute it, and that caused an underspend on transportation of.
That is correct. If we had those other five routes.
So Tim, it's not only was a rerouting, but we also substituted CDL drivers and buses with non-CDL drivers and vans to complete some of the routes. So there's a lot of different challenges in trying to make all the stuff work, and we've taken all the best approaches to making sure kids are getting where they need to go.
But just like, I'm sorry, but the one, you said about the one-off of the revenues, more or less that transportation is not really an over budget. It makes up.
It's what we should have.
So right now, Tim, what do you have in here, last year's budget of 94 or this year's expense of 89?
So in the current budget, I have 94, and part of the forecasted savings, don't forget, is the fuel. I want to make sure that there's at least $100,000 in that savings, which is directly related to fuel. So we do have 89. We have 89 rounds now, but in our budget we have 94. But I'll also tell you right now, when I'm looking at this, I also have a much lower fuel cost in, which is going to have to be looked at because the events recently will have an impact on that. Again, we keep adjusting that month after month as we get closer. And as we talked about in property, you know, I'm going to buy on the futures market what I can and lock in to guarantee a year. I'm going to take it down when it makes sense as much as I can. But sometime between June, July, and August, we're going to be out of fuel, and I will have to make a purchase regardless of what the price is. I'll make small purchases to try and mitigate any expenses associated with it. But who knows, maybe I'm going to have a cheery attitude today and say, you know what, all this is going to go away by the end of June, and we'll be back in the $2 futures market again. But I keep monitoring that. I work with our trader, and he's a really good guy. I think I said on property, the guy called me from Greece to let me know that he was on vacation, to let me know prices dropped, and I locked in our regular fuel. Oddly enough, that was right before all this stuff happened, so that was very fortuitous in our end.
My only question, this is not, I know that you deal with this with facilities, with the transportation, I know we've talked about it before, you're gonna do the sending out requests for private schools if they wanna opt out to the busing again? Does that go out like a letter of opt out for busing? And then, I know.
It's an opt-in.
Opt-in, okay. And then, I know, like, I'm just curious if the busing has ever done like a percentage utilization of what we've been doing all year long. I understand we have to supply for everybody, but when we look at supplementing a big bus versus a mini bus versus a van, and what you did this year, is this something that's viable that can be continued next year instead of opting out to 90, like to more routes? Like, I know we can't ask our seniors and juniors to opt in or opt out, but I wish we could do that, because I'm curious of the utilization rate of our buses, particularly in the upper, across the board, because we know that there's a lot of driving to school, so.
Yeah, I think, just to tag on to that, so I think I asked about that at an earlier meeting when, I mean, obviously I'm still learning, but that we have to be able to provide it for them, right, if they need it, but why could we not at least gauge a level of an ask? I mean, is this, I understand, you know, with having a kid in private school and I have to do the opt-in. They know now, like, there is no bus, I know that now it's my responsibility. Because this is public school, and I'm asking this because I truly don't know the answer, we can't take those parents' word that say, you know, I want to drive. Like, can we not survey them and assume, okay, we only need a van for this Eagleville area? I mean, can we just can't do that?
The first time that a parent can't get their kid and needs the kid to take the bus, we won't have a stop, and we won't know what to do with those kids. Also, this is probably not the best time to do it. There's kids that probably weren't on the bus because of COVID, masking, whatever their reason is. So there's probably a decreased ridership on that. Really what we need to do is we need to have the parents put the kids on the bus. It alleviates all the traffic issues that we have on the campuses and allows the buses to get in and out a little bit easier. But we do need to have just the first snow day, the first early dismissal. The buses are much more crowded, and you need to have a stop for those students.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay, so no, I
We
understand.
will have a savings with the middays, so the middays will be going away because we don't have full day kindergarten. So there will be a savings in transportation associated with that.
We, you know, now would not be a good time to look at utilization, just because most people are still, you know, COVID conscious
Yeah.
and likely are avoiding that, you know, that service. But hopefully the trend, Mr. Rivers is right, you know, things will go a lot better if we get everybody on the bus.
Yeah, I
It's so
agree.
well at the elementary school, most of the kids on the bus.
Yeah.
But it's the Skyview Cola campus, and high school campus.
Yeah, and I think what I was thinking was, you know, asking parents whether they plan on driving, it doesn't matter, because we still have to be able to provide it, so that's, that's a good point. But to your point, then we're utilizing the buses to their capacity, it's alleviating traffic, it's not taking kids 40 minutes to get home, I mean, that's really what we would want to get back to, but, okay. Thank you.
Other questions? We don't have any other questions on that slide, is that the next slide?
Yeah, this is the last slide there. So this should be the timeline and key items that are associated with it. And these are just the high level items. So in March,
We have the current budget status on the screen, is that what we want?
I'm sorry, I thought you were already on that one. Okay, so you look at the current budget status. This is a real quick slide. This just shows how we moved from $18.5 million to $18.7 million and shows you where the changes are on a high level. So we can jump to the next slide. The next slide is the timeline and key items. Marches, we just got February's assessment. I just said, as I let everyone know, there was really no increase in Lower Providence, so that'll be factored into the next budget update, which will be, the March numbers will be presented in April, end of March in April, just so you can understand how that goes. The millage will change if applicable. Any staffing changes will be factored in. North Monco's actual cost is done, and they are going to approve it. Assuming that approves, that'll drop off the list. The second look was out there. We have that now, and we have workman's comp that are coming in. Then you look into the next month, you add in the technology leases. Those are coming in, and we'll get the third look for April. Then we'll get any property E&O around May. So realistic, the consistent change will be the assessment, the millage rate, and staffing. Those are the ones that will change every month based on our personnel and based on the assessed values within the school district.
So, Tim, let me ask you, you used to have like a slide that talked about summary of changes by each month. Are you gonna do that again for us? Like you had, like here you created the changes here, but you had all the side notes on slide 3. And, you know, are you, and slide 4 for expenditures and revenue, are you gonna do that month by month as well? Okay. Just because I like that one best, because then you remember all the changes.
That'll go into the regular presentation. This was an abbreviated.
Good deal.
Any other questions for Mr. Bricker on the updated budget presentation? Do we have any other questions? And that ends discussion topics. Turn over to the chairperson.
Anything else the board wants to bring up?
Yeah, I have something that a few Arrowhead families have brought up to me, and I don't, and I know none of them came to the property meeting Monday, but some of them asked me about the property. I said, maybe you should ask a property, but I'm just asking here at finance, but they're talking around this playground, that they, you know, feel that it wasn't budgeted, how do they go about it? I know home and school is, well, they're saying they don't think it was budgeted. I'm asking the question, again, I don't know the answer and I'm learning, our playground is not hard. Okay,
We
so,
plan for the playground, and we have, you know, a set amount of money for that. Now, the question is, you know, we're gonna be able to do, we can fund the whole playground, whatever that is. There has been interest, at least from parent groups in the past, to contribute to that.
Mhm.
So if they wanted to do that, then we gotta get moving and do that. The great thing is contributed by, you know, the Arrowhead Home School.
mhm.
But it's certainly not necessary. In fact, where we're at right now is we are working with a particular vendor that's able to take some of the old playground equipment at Arrowhead, combine it with some new equipment, and actually save us some dollars as part of that process, because the equipment that we have right now is fine.
Okay,
Yeah, so so there's no need for, or a requirement, so meaning someone had to raise money for a playground to be in existence. That's not gonna happen.
okay, I understand. So there is money budgeted for a
Correct.
playground, but should they want
To add something more to it.
they wanted to
then-
purchase whatever.
Right.
They should talk to them, Mr. Roberts, right?
Yeah, and they've been
And then-
talking
and
to
they've been
Dr.
talking, okay.
Roberts, so, okay, I wanted to ask.
And there's a difference between $100,000 playground, $175,000 playground, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you can take it to, you know, an extreme.
Okay. All
Well, I
right,
have to do a letter to the home and school, so I'll just talk to Dr. Zerby and see, like, if they want to have a discussion with Dr. Roberts about it, and see what the plan would
The
be.
home and
They're with the home and school, they're with Arrowhead Home and School.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I think they're talking to.
Talking about
That was
design
just
and-
me.
But the question really is whether or not, we need to clarify things,
Yeah.
For them, and I'll be glad to do that.
Yeah, because then it's almost like with Worcester, like we're doing Worcester.
well, yeah, and I think that it's a clarification, because the messages that I'm hearing from some of those home and school folks are different than what you just told me, so I think it's communication. Okay, thank you.
I know that Dr. Roberts met with them on Monday and went over the playground design and plans with everyone on that. They asked if they could raise money and he said, yes. He didn't say it was the only way of getting the playground. They're just gonna help to offset the cost.
Thank you. That was it for me. No, I'm good.
Okay. Courtesy of the floor. I was gonna come sit next to you, Jim.
Oh, boy.
Jim Alec, Worcester. You guys need microphones up there. You should see you're all talking to each other, but out there, just doesn't do it. You know, I know I'm getting old, but it's still tough. So, and a microphone here would be good too. We used to always have a microphone here. So I get this correct after watching the presentation. We were overtaxed $1.6 million last year. Meaning, that's what a surplus is. All right? The year before that, we were overtaxed $5 million. And that's low, I think it's higher than that. The 3 years prior to that year, we were overtaxed a total of $9 million. So, the last 5 years, we're overtaxed $16 million. So, my friend, I have to disagree. You know, we were not taxed correctly or accurately. We're off by $16 million. The taxpayers had to pay extra. And then what happens, when you get the excess, we don't get it back. You guys keep it. You put it in your capital fund or whatever. That's gotta change. The outgoing solicitor is continuing to do work. That's when he got bills. Yeah, tell them to stop. And what you'll see is a cliff. If they stop working, you're going to zero. Okay? That's what I would do. Because they'll keep working forever if you let them do it.
what's the calculation for how much of the Shenandoah fund we will get and keep? Anybody know? Anybody do the calculation yet? That's if you don't appeal. The next question will be, what are you gonna do with the money? You should give it back to us, but more than likely, it's going somewhere else. The spreadsheet you guys handed out with right now, you should include the 17-18 year and 18-19 year. Last year you spent $100,000 or $1 million on right now. Now I did the calculations. You have one lawyer working 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks, doing nothing but right to know. That's $436,000. So you do the math. That means 2 lawyers all week long, every hour of the week, for 52 weeks, we're doing nothing but right to know. That's not true. Because just go look at the bills by the lawyers. They were doing something else. Somebody's got to look into it. There needs to be an investigation. Do you guys get to see the legal invoices for right to know? You see them on a monthly basis? Because according to what I found, the only person who does see them is Che Regina. In all my right to know requests, I haven't seen you guys get the invoices. So, you should have had the invoices all along, and this all could have been avoided. When did anybody first realize you had a problem with right to know? Because I got an email from Navarette in 2019, there was a special right to know committee formed. So you guys knew back in 2019 and didn't do a thing. So somebody's got to answer those questions as to, you know, how this all happened, how it got so ridiculous, and why, when you knew about it, you didn't do anything about it. Are you guys aware that with your old solicitor, defaulted on 16 appeals that were filed with the Office of Open Records, which means you didn't respond at all. So I actually win by default. If you can get me what the legal costs were from the time of the default, meaning the time the Office of Open Records rendered their decision, to present on those 16 cases, I'd appreciate it, because the number really should be 0. And I'll bet it's not. All right, thanks.
Hi, Joe Rittenhouse, Lower Providence. I just have one comment from the public, which was we were talking about the separate column for what was budgeted and the difference, and adding that so it could be easy to see. I guess this person's just asking, is there any other avenue to explore, whether it's charts or visuals, for somebody who's not a spreadsheet person to kind of get an assessment of, you know, even if it's a line graph of, hey, this is where it's at, this is what we budgeted, this is what it expected, and this is what it actually is. Just some other form of visual. And then, I'm trying to double check. I really have nothing on my own today, so I'm good.
Mr. Rittenhouse, that was an abbreviated version of the
Yeah,
update.
sure.
So, I mean, there is visuals. We are trying to improve on the communication of the presentation to tell the story a little bit along the way, but this was just an update. So yes, you'll see more of that. We have a request.
Oh, yes.
Motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Seven.
Hi, adjourn.
All right, Jim, have a good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Tim.
Hey,
Thank
Tim,
you.
Can you do me a favor? Since you're, can you just email, oh no, never mind. We're gonna send it in the, never mind. Have a good night.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I'll